Ryan stood in the middle of the bustling alien city, his heart pounding in his chest. He had always dreamed of traveling to distant planets, but nothing could prepare him for the sight before him. The Kalari were unlike any species he had ever seen. Their smooth, shimmering skin and elegant features made them look almost like living sculptures. But it was one of the women who caught his attention more than any other. She stood apart from the others, her long silver hair flowing down, her back like a river of light. Her eyes were the color of the deepest ocean, full of mystery and wonder. She was tall, with an air of grace and power that made everyone around her seem insignificant. Even from a distance, Ryan could feel her presence, and it left him in awe. He had never seen anything like it. "This is amazing," Ryan whispered to his friend Jake, who stood beside him, staring in the same direction. Jake, who was used to Ryan's tendency to admire the unknown, just grinned. "You've got it." "Bad, huh?" Ryan shook his head but couldn't take his eyes off her. "Wow, she's gorgeous. I wish I had a wife like her," he muttered under his breath, unaware that his words had traveled through the still air. The Kalari woman, who had been quietly observing the humans, turned at the sound of Ryan's voice. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Ryan felt his stomach drop, realizing too late that she had heard him. His face flushed with embarrassment. He had meant to whisper, but the words had slipped out louder than he intended. She took a step forward, and Ryan felt his heart race faster. Her presence seemed to grow stronger with each step, until she was standing right in front of him. For a moment, Ryan couldn't breathe. She was even more beautiful up close, and now, instead of admiring her from afar, he was face to face with the woman who had made him lose all composure. "You wish to have a wife like me?" she asked in a voice that was both soft and powerful, her tone laced with curiosity. "I overheard your words. You have no idea who I am, yet you speak of me as if I were a dream." Ryan's mouth went dry, and he could feel his palms sweating. He glanced nervously at Jake, who was now grinning like a fool, clearly enjoying the discomfort Ryan was feeling. But Ryan's focus was entirely on the woman standing before him, her presence so commanding that it was impossible to look away. "I didn't mean," Ryan began, but his words faltered. He didn't know how to apologize for something he hadn't even realized he had done wrong. The woman's lips curved into a small, almost playful smile. "You don't need to apologize," she said. "It's not often I hear such honesty from. You're kind." Ryan felt a rush of relief mixed with confusion. She wasn't upset. In fact, she seemed intrigued. He didn't know how to respond to that, so he simply stood there, awkwardly shifting from one foot to the other. "My name is Liara," the woman said, her eyes never leaving his. "And you are?" Ryan blinked. It was only then that he realized who he was speaking to. Liara was the daughter of the Kalari king, the royal family that governed the entire planet. Ryan had heard stories of her before, how beautiful, intelligent, and powerful she was. She was a figure of legend, not someone he had ever imagined meeting, let alone speaking to in such a casual way. Ryan," he stammered, his heart racing. It's nice to meet you." Leora's gaze softened, and she tilted her head slightly, as if considering something. "It's rare for someone to speak so freely," she said. "I find it refreshing." Ryan swallowed hard, trying to calm his nerves. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I was just admiring you." Liara studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, to Ryan's surprise, she smiled. It was a small, genuine smile that made her seem more human, less like the untouchable figure everyone had made her out to be. "I don't mind being admired," she said. "But it's not often that I hear someone speak of me as if I were a person, not just a symbol of beauty. You're not like the others." Ryan felt a sudden sense of hope, mixed with confusion. What did she mean by that? And why was she talking to him so casually? He had only just met her, and yet it felt as though they were already starting to build some kind of connection. "I don't understand," Ryan said, his curiosity getting the best of him. "Why are you talking to me like this? Most people, they're afraid of you." Lyra's smile faded slightly, and she looked down for a moment, as if considering how to answer him, because most people only see what they expect to see. She replied softly, "They don't look deeper." But you, Ryan, you saw something else. And that's what interests me. Ryan couldn't believe what he was hearing. This was Liara, the Kalari princess, the one who was supposed to be out of reach, someone everyone else admired from afar. And yet here she was, talking to him like they were equals. He didn't know how long they stood there, exchanging looks and quiet words. But in that moment, Ryan realized that his life had just changed. He had no idea where this strange encounter would lead, but one thing was certain. He would never look at Liara the same way again. The days after their first meeting felt like a dream to Ryan. He kept replaying the moment he had spoken to Liara in his mind, wondering if he had said something wrong. But every time he thought about it, he couldn't help but smile. Liara had been so kind, so understanding. He had expected her to turn away in anger or confusion, but instead, she had stayed and talked to him as if they were equals. Ryan didn't know what to make of it. He had never imagined that a conversation with someone like Liara would be so easy. After all, she was the princess of the Kalari people. Her beauty and grace were the stuff of legends. Yet here she was, a real person with thoughts, ideas, and emotions just like anyone else. 2 days later, Liara invited him to a celebration in the Kalari city. Ryan was both excited and nervous at the thought of attending such a grand event, especially with her. He didn't want to mess it up, but he also couldn't ignore the chance to learn more about her. She had asked him to come, and that was something Ryan would never take for granted. The celebration was held in a vast open hall, surrounded by the towering, crystal-like structures of the Kalari city. Music filled the air, a melody that seemed to flow like water, calming the soul. The Kalari danced in groups, their bodies moving in perfect harmony, their faces glowing with joy. Ryan, standing at the edge of the crowd, felt out of place. He was just a human, someone from a distant world, not someone meant to stand among royalty. But then he saw her. Liara entered the hall, her silver hair shimmering in the soft light. She moved with such grace that it was as if the world itself had parted for her. The crowd around her seemed to part in awe, allowing her to walk freely. Ryan watched as she made her way toward him, her eyes locked on his, and a smile appeared on her lips. "Ryan," she said, her voice as smooth and calm as it had been during their first conversation. "I'm glad you came." Ryan stood up straighter, feeling suddenly self-conscious. I didn't know what to expect. This is all so different from Earth." Liara smiled knowingly. "It is different. But it's beautiful, don't you think? The Kalari celebrate the balance of life and nature, the harmony between all things. That's what makes it special." Ryan nodded, looking around at the dancers, the shimmering lights, and the warm atmosphere. It was nothing like he had ever seen before. The people of Earth had their celebrations, but this was something else entirely. They walked together, and Ryan couldn't help but notice the way the Kalari looked at them. Some smiled, while others whispered among themselves. Liara's presence was so powerful that it commanded attention wherever she went. But despite the curiosity of the crowd, she seemed completely at ease, as if this was just another ordinary evening for her. As they reached a quieter part of the hall, Liara stopped and turned to face him. "Seem a little overwhelmed," she said, her voice gentle. Ryan laughed nervously. "Yeah, I guess I am. This is all so new to me." Liara nodded thoughtfully. "I can imagine. You are the first human to visit our world, after all. I know it must feel strange." Ryan hesitated, then said, "I wasn't sure what to expect when I first met you. I thought you'd be different, distant, maybe even unapproachable. But you're not. You're just like me." Liara's expression softened. "You're the first person who has ever said that. People see me as something else, as a symbol, a prize. They don't see the person." Ryan felt a sudden wave of empathy for her. "I don't think you should be treated like that. You're more than just your title. I can see that now. You're not just a princess, you're Liara." Liara smiled, a soft blush appearing on her cheeks. "That means more to me than you know." For a moment, they stood there in silence, the music of the celebration still playing in the background. Ryan felt the weight of the situation. He was with a royal, someone with responsibilities and expectations far beyond his own. Yet, in that moment, none of that seemed to matter. What mattered was the connection between them, the understanding that went beyond their differences. "I don't know what to say," Ryan admitted. "I've never met anyone like you. And I'm not sure I know how to handle this." Liara looked at him with a serious expression. "Neither do I, Ryan. But maybe that's what makes it so special. Sometimes, the most unexpected things are the ones worth pursuing." Ryan felt his heart skip a beat at her words. Was she saying what he thought she was saying? Did she feel the same way? Before he could say anything, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted their conversation. This was one of Liara's attendants, a tall Kalari man with sharp features. "Princess Liara," the man said, bowing slightly, "may your father request your presence in the royal hall? There is an important matter to discuss." Liara nodded, her expression turning more serious. She looked back at Ryan and smiled softly. "Duty calls, but I'll be back soon." "Wait for me?" Ryan nodded without hesitation. "I'll be right here." As Liara walked away, Ryan stood there, watching her disappear into the crowd. He didn't know where this strange connection would take him. But in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Ryan stood alone in the grand hall, his thoughts swirling around his conversation with Liara. The celebration had ended, and most of the guests had dispersed, leaving the grand space quiet and peaceful. Yet his mind was anything but calm. Kept replaying the way Liara had looked at him, the way her smile had made him feel as though the world had slowed down. It wasn't just her beauty. That was undeniable, but it was something more. It was the way she spoke to him, the way she treated him like a person instead of a stranger or a curiosity. It was like she saw him for who he truly was, not just another human from a distant world. Ryan didn't know what it meant, but he knew he felt something strong, a connection he couldn't ignore. Just then, he saw her again. Liara walked into the hall, her silver hair catching the dim light, and her presence seemed to fill the room. She looked different now. She wasn't the princess surrounded by her people. She was just Liara, a woman who had taken a chance on a human she'd barely knew. "Ryan," she said, her voice as warm as ever. "I hope I didn't keep you waiting too long." Ryan smiled, grateful for her company. "It's fine. I was just thinking about what you said earlier." Lyra's expression softened. "You were. Yeah, you said I was the first person to treat you like, well, like a person," Ryan said. "And I just wanted to say that I meant it. I don't think anyone should be treated like they're just a title, especially not you." Lyra's eyes brightened, and she took a step closer to him. "Thank you, Ryan. You have no idea how much that means to me." Ryan felt a strange warmth spread through him. He hadn't expected to have such an impact on her. But in that moment, it seemed like they had both reached an understanding, a deeper connection. They sat down on a nearby bench, and the quiet of the hall seemed to encourage a more serious conversation. Liara turned to Ryan, her face thoughtful. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," she began, her voice softer now. "Something about my life, about who I am." Ryan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What is it?" Liara hesitated. For a moment, her eyes searching his face, as if deciding how much to reveal. "I'm not just a princess. I'm the daughter of the Kalari king, yes, but my life has been decided for me since the moment I was born. My future, my marriage, my duties, they were all chosen for me." Ryan's heart skipped a beat as he listened carefully, unsure of what she meant by this. "Chosen for you? What do you mean?" Liara took a deep breath, her gaze distant as if she was recalling painful memories. "As the royal daughter, I was promised to another noble from a powerful family. My marriage was arranged before I even had a say in it. It's not about love or connection, it's about political alliances. My life has always been tied to the future of our people." Ryan's heart ached for her. He could see the weight in her eyes, the burden she carried that no one else seemed to understand. It wasn't just about being a princess, it was about being trapped in a role. It didn't allow her to be herself. "That doesn't sound fair," Ryan said quietly. "You deserve more than that." Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time he saw a flicker of vulnerability. I didn't have a choice, Ryan, and I've spent my life accepting it, but now I'm not sure I can. Ryan's thoughts raced. He had always known that life in royal families was complicated, but hearing it from Liara made him realize just how much she had sacrificed. She was a prisoner of duty, a prisoner of her position, and he couldn't stand the thought of her being forced into a future she didn't want. I don't want to see you trapped like that, Ryan said, his voice full of conviction. You shouldn't have to marry someone you don't care about. Just because of politics, you should be able to choose your own path. Liara smiled at his words, a small, bittersweet smile. It's not that simple, Ryan. I've been groomed for this role my whole life. If I choose to break away, it could bring conflict between our people. The alliance could fall apart, and that's not something I can risk. Ryan frowned, the weight of her words sinking in. So what? You just accept it? You give up your chance at happiness for the good of your people? Lyra's gaze softened, and she shook her head. It's not that I don't want happiness, but I have a responsibility to my people, to my family. It's not just about me. Ryan took a deep breath, trying to understand her position. Couldn't deny the truth in her words. She was bound by duty in a way he couldn't fully comprehend. But he also couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be another way. Is there really no other choice? Ryan asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Are you really willing to give up everything you want for this? Liara turned away for a moment, her expression unreadable. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know anymore. Ryan, maybe I've spent so many years doing what I was told that I've forgotten what it feels like to have a choice, to have the freedom to decide what I want. Ryan could feel the weight of her words, and he reached out, gently touching her hand. You deserve that freedom, Liara. You deserve to live for yourself, not just for everyone else. For a long moment they sat in silence, the quiet of the hall wrapping around them. Lyra's gaze softened as she looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of emotions, hope, fear, and something else, something Ryan couldn't quite place. I'm not sure what the future holds, Ryan, Liara said softly, but I know one thing. I'm not the same person I was before we met. Ryan smiled, relieved. I'm glad to hear that. And in that moment, as they sat together in the quiet hall, both of them knew that whatever happened next, they had begun something new, something neither of them had expected, but both of them needed. A path that would take them into uncharted territory, where choices and freedom could be theirs. The days after their conversation felt like a whirlwind for Ryan. What had begun as a chance encounter with a beautiful princess had grown into something far deeper and more complicated than he could have ever imagined. Liara had opened up to him in ways that no one else had, and with every passing moment, he found himself drawn to her more than ever. But the truth of her situation hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder that they were from two very different worlds. Ryan knew that her duty was to her people, to her family, and that the weight of the crown she would one day wear was more than just a symbol. It was a life she had been born into, a path that had already been paved for her long before. She had a say in it. He understood that. But he also couldn't ignore the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of freedom, the way she longed for a choice of her own. He couldn't help but wonder what would happen if she had that choice. Would she choose him? Or would she choose her duty to her people? One afternoon, after spending some time with Liara, Ryan found himself lost in thought as he walked through the gardens of the royal palace. The flowers were in full bloom, their colors vibrant under the warm sun. He hadn't expected to find himself here in this beautiful and foreign place, but there he was, thinking about a future he'd never imagined. As he wandered, he spotted Liara, walking ahead, her posture regal as always, but there was something different in the way she moved today. No? There was a tension in her shoulders, a look of deep thought on her face. Ryan quickened his pace to catch up with her. Liara, he called, his voice soft yet urgent. Wait up. She turned at the sound of his voice, a small smile appearing on her face when she saw him. But it didn't reach her eyes. Ryan, she said, her tone quieter than usual. I was hoping to find you. Ryan raised an eyebrow, curious. What's going on? You seem different today. Lyra's smile faded, and she motioned for him to follow her as she led him to a secluded part of the garden, a place surrounded by tall trees that provided shade from the sun. She sat on a stone bench, her hands folded in her lap, and Ryan joined her, sitting close, but keeping a respectful distance. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice hesitant, "about everything we've talked about my life, my duties, and about you." Ryan felt his heart skip a beat at the mention of him. He knew what she meant. She had been torn between her duty to her people and the feeling she had developed. For him, he couldn't blame her for it. He knew the weight of her responsibilities. But he also couldn't help but want to make her see that there was a life beyond duty, a life where she could choose her own happiness. "What have you been thinking?" he asked, his voice gentle. Lyra looked down at her hands, then back up at Ryan, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and determination. "I've been thinking about the marriage I've been promised. It's an alliance between two powerful families. It's meant to strengthen our position in the galaxy. But I don't want it. I don't want to marry someone I don't care about. I don't want to be a symbol for my people. I want to be me." Ryan listened carefully, his heart aching for her. He knew the pressure she was under. But he also knew that she couldn't live her whole life for others. She deserved to be happy, just like anyone else. "You deserve to be happy," Ryan said softly. "You deserve to have a life where you get to choose what happens next." Lyra nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I know, but if I go against my family's wishes, if I choose to marry someone who isn't part of the Royal Alliance, it could destroy everything. The peace we've worked so hard to build, the alliances we've made, could all come crashing down." Ryan took a deep breath, his mind racing. He knew she wasn't wrong, and there was so much at stake, not just for her, but for her entire planet. But he couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be another way, a way for her to be true to herself. "Without losing everything, you don't have to choose between happiness and duty," Ryan said, his voice full of conviction. "There has to be a way for you to follow your heart and still be there for your people. Maybe it's not about choosing one or the other. Maybe it's about finding a way to balance both." Lyra looked at him, her eyes searching his face, as if looking for answers. "Do you really think that's possible?" Ryan met her gaze without hesitation. "I don't know. But I think you should have the chance to find out. You shouldn't be forced into a life that isn't yours. You should be able to decide what's best for you." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Lyra's gaze drifted to the horizon, her thoughts clearly weighing heavily on her. Ryan sat quietly beside her, unsure of what would happen next, but determined to be there for her no matter what. Finally, Lyra spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "I don't know what the future holds, Ryan, but I know one thing for certain." Ryan looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest.
What's
"That I can't marry someone I don't love," Lyra said, her voice filled with quiet resolve. "I can't be forced into a life that isn't mine. And if I have to risk everything to be free, then I will." Ryan felt a surge of hope wash over him. She was ready to take control of her own fate, to make a choice that was hers and hers. Alone. It wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time, Ryan felt that maybe, just maybe, they could have the future they both dreamed of. "You don't have to do it alone," Ryan said, his voice steady. "I'm here, Lyra. Whatever happens, I'll be here with you." She turned to him then, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Ryan. I don't know what this journey will look like, but I'm glad you'll be by my side." And with that, a new chapter began for both of them. A chapter where Lyra would fight for her freedom, and Ryan would stand beside her ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days that followed were filled with tension and uncertainty. Lyra had made up her mind to challenge the path that had been laid out for her, but the consequences of her decision still weighed heavily on her shoulders. Ryan could see it in her eyes every time they spoke. There was a mix of determination and fear, a sense of knowing that the road ahead would not be easy, but also a spark of hope that had been absent before. Ryan had always admired her strength, but now more than ever he was in awe of the courage she showed. It wasn't just the decision she had made, it was the willingness to face everything she had been taught. Everything her family expected, and everything she had been raised to believe. She was about to break free from it all, and that was something Ryan could never take for granted. One evening, as they sat in the quiet of the palace gardens, the stars above twinkling like diamonds in the dark sky, Liara turned to Ryan with a look that told him something important was on her mind. "Ryan, there's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. Ryan, who had been watching the stars with her, turned, his attention to her, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What is it?" "I've spoken to my father," she began, her eyes focused on the ground. "I've told him I can't marry the man he chose for me. I've told him that I want to choose my own future, and that it won't be with the family he had arranged for me to marry." Ryan felt a lump form in his throat. He had known this moment was coming, but hearing her say it out loud made the weight of the situation feel real. This was that Lyra had chosen a different path, one that could change everything. "Is he angry?" Ryan asked quietly, afraid to hear the answer. Liara nodded slowly. "Yes, he's disappointed. He said it could ruin the alliance between our people. That my decision might spark conflict between the Kalari and the other races we've made treaties with." Ryan reached out, taking her hand gently in his. "I'm sorry you're going through this. I know how much it means to you and your people. But I'm proud of you for making the choice that's right for you." Liara squeezed his hand, her expression softening. "I appreciate that, Ryan, but it's not just about me anymore. If I go through with this, I'll have to stand by my decision, no matter the cost. It's not just about disappointing my family. It's about risking the future of my people." Ryan didn't know what to say to that. He couldn't pretend to fully understand the weight of her position. But he knew one thing for sure. Liara deserved a life where she had the power to choose her own happiness. The last thing he wanted was for her to feel trapped in a world where she had no say. "There has to be a way for you to have both," he said, trying to find a way to reassure her. "Maybe it's not about choosing between your family and your happiness. Maybe it's about finding a new way forward. One that doesn't force you to give up either." Liara smiled faintly. "I wish it were that simple, Ryan. I wish I could see a clear path that keeps both my family and my heart safe. But sometimes there's only one road to walk. I'm not sure where it leads yet." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air between them. Ryan could feel the depth of her struggle, and it made his own heart ache. She was caught between two worlds, two futures, and no matter what she chose, someone would be hurt. It was an impossible situation, but he knew that she couldn't keep living in a place where she had no control over her own destiny. Finally, Ryan spoke again, his voice filled with resolve. "No matter what happens, Liara, I'm with you. You don't have to do this alone. We'll figure it out together." Her eyes softened, and she looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, a sense of trust that Ryan could feel in his bones. "I don't know if I can do this without you, Ryan," she admitted. "You've given me something. I never thought I'd have someone who sees me for who I am, not just as a princess or a symbol. You've made me feel like I can make a choice for myself, and for that, I'm forever grateful." Ryan felt his chest tighten at her words, and for the first time in their time together, he realized just how much she meant to him. She wasn't just a beautiful alien princess to him. She was someone who had become an important part of his life, someone he cared for deeply. "I'll always be here for you, Liara," he said softly. "Whatever you choose, we'll face it together." A tear slipped from Lyra's eye, but it was not a tear of sadness, it was one of relief. "Thank you, Ryan. You've made this easier, even if I don't know what happens next." "I'm just glad I can be here for you," he replied, his voice full of sincerity. They sat there in the quiet of the garden for a long time, just holding each other's gaze. There was no need for words anymore. They both knew what was at stake, but in this moment, they also knew that they weren't alone. They had each other, and that meant everything. The next day, Liara made her decision clear to the royal court. She stood before her father and the council of elders, with Ryan by her side, and declared that she would not be forced into a marriage she did not choose. It was the hardest thing she had ever done, but in the end, it was the right choice. It was her choice. The room was filled with tense silence, but Liara stood tall, her voice unwavering. She had made up her mind, and there was no turning back. Now, the path ahead was uncertain, and the consequences of her actions were still unknown. But one thing was certain: she had taken control of her future. And that was a victory in itself. Ryan stood beside her, his heart swelling with pride. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew that no matter what, they would face it together. The days following Leora's decision were filled with uncertainty and change. Word of her defiance spread quickly through the royal court, and the reactions were mixed. Some of the Calori elders were furious, calling her decision reckless. Others, however, saw her courage and admired her for choosing her own happiness over political duty. Leora knew that what she had done was going to change everything for her people. But she was ready to face the consequences. Ryan stood by her, sighed through it all, offering his support and reassurance whenever she needed it. He could see the strain on her face, the weight of her choice pressing on her shoulders, but he also saw the spark of freedom in her eyes. For the first time, she was living for herself, not for anyone else. One evening, as they walked through the quiet palace gardens, Leora stopped and turned to Ryan, her expression more serious than usual. "Ryan, I don't know what's going to happen next," she said, her voice soft but filled with determination. "I've made my choice, but that doesn't mean everything will be easy. There'll be challenges ahead, and I need to be ready for them." Ryan stopped beside her, his heart full of pride for the woman standing next to him.
"You've already
made the hardest decision," he said, his voice steady. "Now, all we can do is face what comes next together. Whatever happens, I'll be here for you. You're not alone." Leora smiled at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Ryan. I don't know how I would have made it this far without you." Ryan's heart swelled at her words. "You don't have to thank me. I'll always be here no matter what." They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the soft rustling of the leaves in the breeze. Ryan could feel the weight of what they were facing, but there was also a sense of relief. Leora had chosen to live for herself, to take control of her future. And in that moment, Ryan realized that he wanted to be part of that future, no matter where it led. The following days were filled with meetings, both private and public, as Leora worked to navigate the consequences of her decision. She spoke with her father, the king, and the elders of the Calori people. While some were still angry, others began to see the wisdom in her choice. Slowly but surely, the Calori were beginning to accept that their princess was no longer just a symbol to be used for political gain. She was a person with her own desires, her own dreams, and her own future. Ryan, though he was not a part of these royal meetings, felt the changes as well. He saw how Leora's presence was changing the way people viewed her and the way they viewed humans. The Calori had always seen themselves as superior to other species, but now, with Leora leading the way, they were starting to see the value of individuality, of freedom, and of love beyond political alliances. One evening, after a particularly difficult meeting with her father, Leora and Ryan sat together in the palace's quiet library. The room was filled with the scent of old books, the walls lined with shelves of ancient Calori texts and scrolls. The quiet comfort of the space was a welcome relief after the tension of the day. "Things are changing," Leora said softly as she sat across from him at a wooden table, her fingers tracing the edges of a book. "But it's not just about me anymore. It's about all of us, my people, the humans, the other species we've made alliances with. It's about finding a way to move forward together." Ryan nodded, his thoughts on the bigger picture. "I know it's not going to be easy, but if anyone can lead the way, it's you." Leora looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of determination and doubt. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this, Ryan. I've spent so many years being told what to do. Now I'm the one who has to make the decisions. What if I make the wrong choice?" Ryan leaned forward, his voice filled with reassurance. "You've already made the hardest choice. You're living for yourself now, and that's what matters. Whatever happens next, you'll figure it out. You're strong, Leora. You always have been." She smiled at his words, the warmth of his support washing over her. "Thank you, Ryan. I don't know what I'd do without you." Ryan reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "You don't have to worry about that. We'll never be alone." For a long time, they sat in silence, the weight of the world outside the library doors heavy on both of them. But in that moment, it didn't seem to matter. They had each other, and that was enough. As the weeks passed, the political situation continued to shift. Lyra's decision to defy her father had sparked conversations throughout the Kalari world. While there were still those who opposed her, others were beginning to see the truth in her actions. Lyra was not just a princess, she was a leader, someone who was willing to take risks for the future of her people. And slowly, the Kalari began to change. Ryan stayed by her side through it all. He was there for the tough moments, when Lyra felt the weight of her choices. He was there for the quiet moments, when they could simply sit together and breathe, knowing that they were no longer bound by the expectations of others. One day, as they walked through the gardens once again, Lyra turned to him with a smile that was both peaceful and determined. "You know, Ryan," she said, her voice full of hope, "I think we might just make this work. We might just be able to find a way forward, together." Ryan smiled back at her, his heart full. "I think we will." And with that, the future seemed brighter than ever. The road ahead would not be easy, but it would be theirs to walk together. As they stepped into the unknown, they did so with the knowledge that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, they had each other. And that was all they needed.